Of the many great plays an athlete can make, some of the best never take place on the playing field at all. They actually take place above the playing field. To make such plays, an athlete must possess excellent jumping skills. An athlete that can jump has the opportunity to influence the vertical aspect of a competition, whereas an athlete that remains land-based is far more limited in the area that they can control. When training to improve jumping skills, there are two main areas of focus. First, an athlete must train to increase the maximum height of their jumps. Jumping higher will afford the athlete the opportunity to make more dramatic plays. The second area of focus is on the quickness of consecutive jumps. By minimizing the time spent on the ground reloading for the next jump, the athlete will develop pogo stick skills that will keep them in the air more often. The combination of these two skills will help an athlete launch an all-out aerial assault on their competition. For an athlete to achieve the highest possible jump, they must coordinate four important motions. The way we teach our athletes these motions is by having them perform an exercise called technique walks. By performing this exercise, Ruffin is demonstrating that he can smoothly coordinate the forward thrust of his hips and arms, the extension of his legs, and the downward flick of his foot. These four motions take place at the same moment, at full speed. Ruffin will be able to apply maximum force to the ground and launch himself into the air. By having an athlete perform technique walks, you will be able to quickly identify any problems with rhythm and coordination they may have. As you watch, make sure your athlete is thrusting their hips forward and upward at the same time they are making a large sweeping motion with their arms. As these two motions take place, the athlete should be extending their legs and pushing off the ground with the fronts of their feet. We tell our athletes that they should end up in a tall, skinny position like they're about to shoot straight up a narrow tube. To help athletes better understand the importance of each component of the jump, we often have them perform a few exercises that isolate each movement. By having Ruffin perform the pogo stick exercise, we force him to concentrate only on the downward push of his feet. We have instructed Ruffin to pretend that he is strapped to a board in an upright position, and the only thing he can move is his feet. He maintains this position and then quickly pops into the air 8 to 10 times. Arm jumps isolate the forward thrust of the arms. Here Troy has placed Daphne about 12 inches away from a line on the court. He has instructed her to maintain an upright position with her hips, legs, and feet in a locked position. She must try to hop forward onto her target line by only using the forceful forward thrust of her arms. By performing this exercise, Daphne will learn to harness the power in her upper body when she jumps. While the last drill forced Daphne to jump by only using her arms, torpedo jumps will force Ruffin to jump by using everything except his arms. This exercise is performed by simply locking the arms to the side and powering off the ground with the legs. When the arms are taken out of the equation, athletes quickly realize how important their upper body is when trying to perform a maximum leap. By combining the jumping components of the last three drills into one fluid motion, athletes are able to maximize the height of their vertical jumps. Because proper technique is so important to jumping, these first four drills should be mastered by all athletes. The most basic exercise we use with young athletes to develop jumping ability is called frog leaps. Here I've placed Sean on a line and asked him to leap out as far as possible. You will notice that Sean is using all of the proper leaping mechanics we covered in the first four exercises. He is coordinating the forward thrust of his hips and arms, the extension of his legs, and the downward push of his feet. You will also notice that he has his entire body in a perfectly straight line from his heels to the top of his head at the moment he leaves the ground. This means that he is applying maximum force and thus will achieve his best possible jump. As athletes get comfortable with a single frog leap, we then have them perform a series of frog leaps. Athletes are instructed to perform 4 consecutive leaps for as great a distance as possible. In this version of the exercise, we look to see how quickly the athlete can rebound from one jump to the next while maintaining proper technique. As you can see, Sean has nearly mastered this motion since his time on the ground is minimal and each jump is almost a carbon copy of the last. We can raise the level of difficulty of frog leaps by adding the resistance of flexible rubber tubing as shown here. Another easy way to teach an athlete proper jumping technique is to have them perform an exercise called caber swings. In this exercise, Adam begins by holding a weighted 3-pound ball above his head. He allows the weight of the ball to pull him down into a loaded position where his knees are bent and his hips and arms are positioned behind the rest of his body. At this point, Adam then smoothly reverses the motion of the ball until it is back above his head, his knees and hips are in alignment, and all of his weight is supported on the fronts of his feet. This smooth, fluid swinging motion perfectly mimics a proper leaping motion. After an athlete has mastered the motion of the caber swing, they are ready to move on to the caber toss. This is performed exactly like the last drill, except that the ball is actually thrown at the top of the swing. As Adam reaches the bottom part of the swing, he now hits the ignition button and fires the ball upward. By using a quick, powerful forward motion with his hips, extending his legs, and pushing off the front of his feet, Adam is able to launch the ball straight up in the air. Adam's goal is to throw the ball as high as possible and have it land directly where he was standing. Because the forward thrust of the hips plays such a crucial role in many athletic movements, the caber toss is one of our favorite exercises to use with athletes of all ages. Also, because it is the speed and height of the throw that athletes are most interested in, we're able to keep the weight of the ball relatively low and safe. The next version of the caber toss is to have an athlete perform it backwards. By throwing the ball backwards, the athlete is required to overemphasize the forward thrust of the hips. In this demonstration, we are having our athletes not only throw the ball backwards as far as they can, but also turn around and run the ball down as quickly as possible. An easy and fun way to develop jumping skills is to set up a series of obstacles. Here Taboris has laid out a series of cones, bags, hurdles, and platforms for Dalton to jump on and over. But absolutely anything can serve as an obstacle. Garbage cans, chairs, pets, younger brothers and sisters are all fair game to be used. In fact, the more bizarre the obstacle, the more athletes seem to want to do this exercise. As athletes progress, the height of the obstacles and the distance between them will increase. In this demonstration with Sean, Taboris has included a 40-inch plyometric box for Sean to land on top of. The athlete's goal is to always jump through the series of obstacles as fast as possible while maintaining proper jumping mechanics. If you're working with 2 or more athletes, you may want to set up several series of obstacles and have the athletes race through as we are doing here with Sean and Dalton. Since many motions used during competition require athletes to push off with only one leg, we always like to work in a certain amount of single leg jumping. By using a smaller set of obstacles from the last demonstration, Taboris is having Sean perform a series of jumps only on his right leg. This motion is much more difficult than the last, but is excellent at helping athletes develop the powerful single leg strength needed for motions like sprinting, cutting, and single leg jumping. Don't forget, anytime an athlete is performing a single leg motion, they must do equal repetitions on both their right and left legs. Another great way to improve an athlete's ability to separate from the ground is to have them perform Russian jumps. This exercise simply involves resisting the athlete in their leaping motion. This could be done by placing your hands on the athlete's shoulders and pushing down, by having them wear a weighted vest, or by using flexible rubber tubing and a waist belt like we are demonstrating here. Whatever resistance is being applied creates an overload that the athlete must learn to explode through. Their mechanics should remain the same as before, and they should aim to maximize their time in the air and minimize their time on the ground. As we have emphasized in the previous 2 videos, contrast training is an important component of developing speed, agility, and quickness. This simply means that after an athlete has performed a motion with resistance or assistance, they then immediately perform a similar motion freely without the resistance or assistance. After we've had our athletes go through the motions of Russian leaps, we have them take off the Viper belt and flexicord and quickly hop through a series of small obstacles. Another technique our athletes like is to perform their free jumps while batting down balls that we throw over their head. Using the balls makes this exercise a little more fun and gives the athlete immediate feedback on how they are doing. Similar to the last drill is Russian skips. Just as we resisted our athletes as they performed leaps, we are now resisting them as they perform skips. Since a skip is a single leg motion, it is an excellent tool for developing some of the single leg jumping strength we discussed earlier in this section. After Mallory has performed a series of resisted skips, she immediately removes the resistance and sprints free for 10 to 20 yards. We use a short sprint as our contrasting free movement because sprinting is in fact nothing more than a series of quick one-legged jumps alternating from one leg to the other. Although all the jumping we've demonstrated thus far has involved only straight ahead and vertical motions, that's not the way it always works during competition. Sometimes athletes must jump straight up and then land and quickly jump sideways or backwards. To help our athletes learn to jump in a variety of directions, we have them go through an exercise called the hurdle maze. Here we have taken a dozen 12-inch hurdles and arranged them in a progression on the ground. Adam's job is to start at the first hurdle, jump over it, hit the ground, and then quickly jump in the direction of the next hurdle. His goal is to complete the entire series as quickly as possible without knocking over any of the hurdles. For younger athletes, we use smaller hurdles as Alex Ann is demonstrating here. As athletes become stronger, we may have them hop through the hurdle maze on a single leg. As mentioned in the beginning of this section, an athlete's ability to reduce the amount of time it takes them to reload between jumps is very important. One of the ways we train this skill is through an exercise called depth jumps. Depth jumps simply involve having an athlete step off a slightly elevated surface and then perform another task as soon as they touch the ground. The key is getting them used to mentally anticipating the next move they are going to make and to get their body in the position to do so before their feet ever come back into contact with the ground. Here Taboris has placed Bethany on top of a 12-inch platform with another 20-inch platform in front of her. Bethany's job is to step off the starting platform and then quickly explode up to the next platform as soon as she touches the ground. You will notice that before Bethany hits the ground, she is already preparing for the next jump by pulling her hips and arms back into a loaded position. The moment her feet touch the ground, the rest of her body is ready to fire and make the next jump. Depth jumps can be performed in a variety of ways. We could have our athlete follow their depth jump with a quick sprint as Andre is demonstrating here. We could also add a weighted ball that must be thrown as Ruffin is demonstrating here. We could also have the athlete sprint after the ball once they have thrown it. It is important to note that higher is not necessarily better when it comes to depth jumps. Again, the key is quickness off the ground. Since increasing the height of the beginning platform will only serve to slow the athlete's rebound off the ground, we conduct most of our depth jumps off a platform of only 12 inches.